Simple, easy to follow. Now it's punchin' time. Kuwabara. Now talk about a character I was not expecting to like as much as I do. Koenma gets some killer comedy moments as well. I think the subtlety of this moment shows just how good Togashi is at writing Yusuke. I'm an easy mark. Yu Hakusho. I already love Yu so much. With hopefully the worst joke out of the way, allow me to tell you a tale. A tale about a dead boy with the sickest style possible, and how I came to love this series. Yu Hakusho is one of those classic anime. I vaguely remember it from my Toonami days, but the only thing that stuck with me is, of course, the spirit gun. For the longest time, I actually didn't even know what this show was called. It was only after I watched Hunter x Hunter a few years ago that I wanted to learn more about Yoshihiro Togashi, and that's when I rediscovered Yu Hakusho, what I always remembered as the spirit gun show. Now, after only watching 25 episodes of the anime, I'm convinced I'm a sucker for Togashi's work. He's able to craft characters and build out his worlds in such a smooth and satisfying way. I recently started the Dark Tournament, and I'm already head over heels, but that's not what this video is about. The first saga, the Spirit Detective Saga, is the topic of this 100% blind review. I have a lot to say about the introduction to this world, the characters, their evolution and relationships, and of course, the juicy spirit action. I appreciated how the series just threw us into a day in the life of Yusuke, this delinquent punk kid who is feared by his classmates and hated by his teachers. His only meaningful relationships are with a childhood friend, who he doesn't deserve, and a certifiable moron who begs Yusuke to beat the piss out of him every day. I loved this. He's so unlike the shonen protagonist that I'm used to. The most interesting quirk about Yusuke, what sucked me into this series so quickly, is his existence in the middle of things. It's impossible to put Yusuke in a box. He's a delinquent, but he cares for strangers. He's a seemingly unplanned child of a young mother, placing his home life adjacent to normalcy, which shapes his unique perspective. By the time of his death, it's made clear that Yusuke is not perfectly bad and not perfectly good, so even the afterlife doesn't have a place for him. They never predicted that he of all people would sacrifice his life to save a little boy, but his sacrifice was also entirely in vain. He's this enigma that no one knows quite what to do with. It's this societal misfit mixed with a punk, devil-may-care attitude that makes Yusuke the perfect lead for this show, grounding all the following spiritual action with a relatable but unpredictable main character. Oh, and have I mentioned Yusuke's fashion? Would you look at this? That's some 90s glory right there. The outfits and hairstyles in the show are so goddamn good, but it isn't all pompadours and jackets. The hook is the tragic death of the main character, and how he's gonna come back from the spirit world. This whole afterlife thing could have been handled in infinite number of ways. Togashi had free reign to do whatever he wanted, and I love he designed it in a bureaucratic way similar to Dragon Ball. While the two settings are based on the same mythology and have noticeable overlaps, I think Yusuke is crafted perfectly to work within this afterlife because it's exactly the kind of thing Yusuke hates. He's anti-authority by nature, so it was a great choice to make the spirit world this strict, office-like setting with a literal nepotism baby at its head. The early conflict of the story comes from Yusuke having to work within this structured bureaucracy, something that he hated doing when he was alive, as evidenced by his relationship with school. This creates easy opportunities for character conflict and drama, while fleshing out how the afterlife works, and it allows Yusuke, and by extension the audience, time to get to know the supporting characters who will become so integral to this series. Bottom line, I think all the setup was handled brilliantly. It may be a little slow for someone expecting crazy spirit action right out of the gate, but I think it was invaluable in setting the stage for that action by competently laying out who Yusuke is and why we should care about his story. From here, Yu Hakusho morphs into an adventure about a punk kid who works for the head of the spirit world, solving paranormal cases that usually involve punching demons in the face. While the cases start off simple, they slowly evolve until Yusuke becomes infamous among apparitions for his demon-fighting action. Throughout these spiritual shenanigans, the series takes care to build up the relationships Yusuke has with the supporting characters around him, so that's who we're gonna focus on now. Keiko is a sweetheart angel, and she doesn't deserve the trash treatment she gets from everyone, especially Yusuke. Keiko, sweetie, honey, he doesn't deserve you. So Keiko is Yusuke's love interest, and for a while, the show has fun doing a will they won't they, but their relationship is solidified fairly early on. She's the one person who can give Yusuke shit for his behavior, and I really enjoy their dynamic. It's made clear she really cares for him when she saves his soulless ass from his burning home. In turn, I think Yusuke views her as way too good for him, which results in him keeping her at arm's length. While I do appreciate the layered relationship they have, it isn't focused on too much after the first arc, and is more so an afterthought or used just as motivation for Yusuke when Keiko is damsel in distress a number of times. Those wore thin on me by the end of the saga, but despite all the times Keiko is unjustly sidelined and lied to, I still think she's a great addition to the cast. Kuwabara. Now talk about a character I was not expecting to like as much as I do. He starts off as this boneheaded fighting moron, but very quickly he gets some depth. That episode when he's forbidden from fighting for the sake of his crew, and then Yusuke helps him study in his dream, was excellent. Not only does it set up Kuwabara's honor code, but it also plays up his connection to the spirit world, which is vital because he's gotta be one of the fighter boys. At a certain point, the series turns into the Yusuke and Kuwabara show for good reason. He brings a lot to the table. It's a bit odd just how powerful Kuwabara is as a regular guy, but his attitude, both comedic and action-oriented, are great additions, and his tough love friendship with Yusuke is a terrific dynamic that complements both characters, enhancing the overall series. Botan and Koenma are the primary spirit world characters we interact with. I love Botan. She's always styling on everyone with her various wardrobe changes, and her more polite and noble attitude works as a fun counterbalance in her relationship with the others. She's really the moral compass of the series whenever Keiko isn't around, and she does a great job interacting with the boys during the action without feeling like she's hindering them. Botan improves any scene she's in, and I love having her around. Koenma is just hilarious. The concept of replacing King Yama with his spoiled son is already comedic gold, but the fact that his son is an infant who looks like this and has a chip on his shoulder about his appearance was brilliant. Although, I do wish we got to see more from him. Usually he's only interacting with his ogre workers, watching some video feed. However, I think that's part of a larger problem with the spirit world in general. At this early point, the spirit world doesn't really feel well flushed out. It just feels like it's Koenma's office, and then I have no idea what else is there. Demons gotta live somewhere, there's gotta be more to it. So yeah, this little tyke rules and is the source for most of my comedic enjoyment. Finally, Kurama and Hiei. Now these two guys I was actually a bit mixed on. Actually, that's not true. I like Kurama from the second he appeared on screen. It's Hiei who I wasn't so sure about at first. The story introduces these two as the antagonists of Yusuke's first real case, and as someone with a semi-functioning brain who can see the promo art, the mid-episode eye-catcher, and the opening and ending credits. Well, I just had a kooky hunch that these two would be sticking around for a while. I would have preferred the surprise, but hey, marketing's gotta market. Kurama's turn from baddie to goodie came and went with ease. He was never set up as a terrible demon, and he had a relatable and emotional backstory that made it obvious he'd be an ally going forward. I really like Kurama as a character, although he hasn't really had much time to shine yet. Hiei was introduced as more of an outright antagonist. Honestly, as the series has gone on, I don't understand how he even lost to Yusuke in their original fight, because this dude is powerful. While on paper, Hiei is the coolest of the bunch, I found him to be the most boring until the final arc, which opened my eye, pun intended, to the layers that are being built with his character. However, as punishment for his crimes, he is forced to work alongside Yusuke on some missions, and surprisingly, the standout result of this is the aggressive relationship he forms with Kuwabara. I have to say, I enjoy the squad these four dudes form. One of the best aspects of this squad is how mean everyone is to each other. The delinquent demon dynamic is really fun, and sometimes I just feel bad for sweet Kurama being caught up between shouting matches. Togashi assembled an impressive and unique cast of characters in such an organic and succinct way. Now, it's time that I move on to how those characters are used in the story. The meat and potatoes of the Spirit Detective saga are small arcs that slowly progress the story. These can feel a little formulaic. Some arcs I liked more than others, some villains I felt were too one-dimensional, and some story beats I felt were already well-trodden territory. All in all, I did like what was presented here, and I feel the storytelling only improved with each arc. I've already praised the introduction to this series, but the entire first arc of Yusuke returning to his body was fantastic. It did its job of getting me to care about Keiko, her relationship with Yusuke, and the hard-headed buffoon with a heart of gold. I appreciate how Yusuke developing a relationship with those around him is at the center of all these arcs. The Spirit Detective Saga excels at building out a supporting cast in a believable way. Now, let's get to the nitty-gritty. Yusuke doesn't even want to come back to life. He thinks everyone would be way better off without him, and he's ready to pass on. What an interesting way to introduce us to the main character. I just can't get over that. Now, this might be a familiar concept to some. After all, one of the most famous movies ever made uses this story structure. But hey, there's always room for new interpretations. Much like an abridged version of It's a Wonderful Life, hosted by Botan, Yusuke sees that people do care about him. Thanks to this scene, I already knew I was a sucker for the series since I teared up throughout the entire wake. I'm an easy mark. This is where the Beast Egg comes in, which is such a Togashi concept that I like a lot. Depending on Yusuke's actions, the egg will feed on his positive or negative spirit energy, creating a beast that will either bring Yusuke back to life or erase him from existence completely. It's fun and provides the most existential stakes possible, while primarily allowing Yusuke to remain passive so the rest of the plot can move on. Brilliant! I didn't expect to like all the slice of life stuff during Yusuke's time as a spirit as much as I did. The mission to make sure his body remains intact was fun. You know, possessing Kuwabara and all that. But dude, what is with these nasty bitch teachers? Every one of them is a despicable pile of hog shit. Except that one guy. He's chill. Probably the best episode of this batch was the Keiko-focused episode with the fire. It solidifies her as a badass, pretty much guarantees a relationship between her and Yusuke, and has an excellent character-defining moment for him. The only way to save Keiko was to sacrifice the Beast Egg, but by doing so, he's actually gifted his life back anyway. A cop-out? I don't really think so. He earned it. The best aspect of the Beast Egg is the Togashi twist that if Yusuke had gone the regular route, he would have been consumed. The obsession with making sure the audience knows Yusuke isn't a good guy, continuing to force him into this nebulous middle zone, is so fascinating. By the end of the first arc, the main character remains not pure, but still with enough obvious good in him. Pair that up with some experience with the afterlife, and we've got some juicy setup for the Spirit Detective. The next 3 mini-arcs weren't as strong as the first one, but I still think there are gems to appreciate. The Artifacts of Darkness is Yusuke's first case as the newly knighted Spirit Detective, and I enjoyed seeing his working relationship with Botan and Koenma, as well as the fun spirit gadgets he was given. This is also when we get the glorious addition of Koenma's fear of his daddy, that I love. It's a perfectly surface level reason to keep putting Yusuke in horrible situations. I was a bit disappointed that Yusuke's resurrection doesn't really surprise too many people. I mean, he was straight up dead. There was a wake with a body and everything. I get that there aren't too many side characters who would give a shit, but it feels like something maybe the kids at school would bring up, adding to Yusuke's larger-than-life reputation. Maybe they end up calling him a demon. That could be a fun little irony. Instead, it's pretty much business as usual with Kuwabara, Keiko, and of course, the asshole teachers. For real? What is wrong with that guy? I'm very happy he was the first victim of the spirit gun. The arc itself is very simple. Fight one bad guy to recover one bad artifact. Do that 3 times. But firstly, we have to get styled on. Just look at these two. God damn! So the standout of this arc has to be Kurama. I loved everything about the little fox boy in this arc. His origin and his attachment to his human mother. It just added depth to the conflict and highlighted Yusuke's own selflessness, which was an unexpected beat in his first action-centric arc, and I dug it. The Hiei fight was simply cool. Fun transformation, Kurama came to help, satisfying finisher with the spirit gun. I wasn't in love with this conflict, but it was serviceable. The worst part of the arc had to be the initial fight with Boring McBoring Pants. Believe it or not, I thought it was boring. The Genkai Tournament arc was fun, but I felt I'd seen parts of it done better in Hunter x Hunter. It had a very similar structure to phases from the Hunter exam, but felt underbaked by comparison. I like that this arc fully brings Kuwabara into the spirit side of things, just taking his slight paranormal awareness and raising it to an unimaginable level, but hey, somehow it works. Since this is a tournament, it's made or broken by its fights, and those were the weakest part of this arc, aside from the main antagonist. The entire reason Yusuke was sent on this mission in the first place was to stop the demon Rando from learning Genkai's technique. Unfortunately, he's almost as uninteresting as Mick Boring Pants. It was obvious he'd be the one non-tough looking dude, so the mystery was never engaging, and his design just looks like angsty Kurama with face paint. However, the issue with Rando comes from a larger problem the earlier arcs suffer from, which ties back to my criticism about the spirit world. What are the stakes of this arc? Like, what exactly is a demon, and what threat do they actually pose? It's vaguely implied just death and destruction to humans. Even within the context of this arc, what's Rando's end goal? And why does Yusuke have to deal with it? Are there other spirit detectives? What was Koenma doing before Yusuke died like a month ago? Since we are told the stakes are high, even though they remain undefined, that raised a lot of questions in my mind that I felt weren't addressed in the arc. That's a long way of saying that Rando is definitely the weak point here. Whereas the two strong points were Kuwabara and Genkai. Kuwabara getting into the mix with his spirit sword was satisfying as hell, and having him take a brutal beating was kind of a necessary induction ceremony into this world. I like Genkai a lot. Once again, she's another character that clashes well with Yusuke and makes for the perfect instructor. When this arc ended, I was excited to see some training under this old lady for 6 months. I thought that was a really fun way to mix things up. To my surprise, the Beasts of Maze Castle arc picks up 6 months later, skipping over all the training. Yusuke has clearly improved his skills, still treats Keiko like garb, and heads to the mysterious city of apparitions to stop the Saint Beasts. Unlike the prior arc, the stakes of this one are communicated to the viewer right away. These demons have been isolated for too long and want their own place on Earth. Simple, easy to follow. Now it's punch-in time. This is when the 4 main boys first assemble, and unsurprisingly, Togashi is able to display great group chemistry right away. However, I do think that everything in this arc up until the climax was a bit too by the numbers. Everyone gets a fight to show what they can do, and to solidify their unlikely alliance, but nothing stood out as very exciting. Kurama has a cool rose, Kuwabara is determined, Hiei has a secret softer side. Nothing is bad, but the flat antagonists held the battles back from being truly memorable. That is, until it's Yusuke's turn. He faces off with the head of the Saint Beasts, Suzaku, who has a pretty fun design invoking this mystic ancient demon noble. The powers that Suzaku brings to the table are definitely refreshing, particularly his clone technique. As is tradition, Yusuke gets his ass kicked until he doesn't, but the reason this fight succeeds is because it feels like this well-orchestrated culmination of everything that's been built up since the beginning of the arc. Having Keiko tormented by zombies back home as Yusuke battles to save her was fantastic and raised the stakes, but what really connected with me is the turning point in the battle. Yusuke is being tortured to death by Suzaku's clones, and he reflects on his training with Genkai. The key to his victory isn't some new move he suddenly remembers, but instead, it's from his mental training. Genkai berated him, saying that he's never worked hard, the things he's good at always came easy, and he never fully commits to something for fear he'll fail. She tells him he needs to focus his mind on what's important and commit to that 100%. Yusuke asks himself, okay, but what's important? This fits with his delinquent persona and general attitude toward himself. It's such a genuine, self-defining, and simple question that lets us know the true struggle that's holding him back. It's only when he's near death, when his loved ones' lives depend on him, that Yusuke finally realizes what's important to him. Rather than being a burden to those around him, he can keep them safe. I feel like this cathartic moment could be overlooked by some because a lot of shonen internal conflicts boil down to the power of friendship. But I appreciated how this connected to Yusuke's worldview, particularly of his place in it. I think the subtlety of this moment shows just how good Togashi is at writing Yusuke, even in an arc that I found mostly lackluster. Bottom line, everything about this Suzaku finale was excellent. Oh, and Botan told Keiko everything. She certainly deserved to know, since she was nearly killed by zombies, so thank God there are no more secrets. Just kidding! Yusuke thought the same thing, but turns out Keiko thinks Yusuke is interning for a real detective. Not sure what mental gymnastics Keiko had to go through to tie that to the zombies that were attacking her the other day, but yeah. Keiko deserves better. So we're finally onto the last arc in this saga, the Rescue Yukina arc. And I think this is Yu Hakusho finally finding its footing. The entire setup for Yukina's Tears is so well done, introducing an underworld crime lord into the mix, which I always love. But the arc also goes out of its way to establish unique motivations for the main players involved. Kuwabara doesn't want to go on another spirit adventure. Until he sees Yukina, then he's all aboard the love train. Hiei is set up with his own mysterious reason to get involved, and it's later revealed that Yukina is his sister. Even Kurama gets a little motivation with needing to make sure Hiei doesn't lose his cool. It's a great way to loop all four main characters into the mix without it feeling forced. And of course, Koenma gets some killer comedy moments as well. The entire gag with the well-produced mission tape was hilarious, but later on, when he tells the ogre to tuck him in, I started dying. And that's just the setup. When the action gets going, it communicates just how much stronger Yusuke and Kuwabara have gotten. They easily beat all the chump-ass demons up the mountain, and then emerge from that explosion in the most badass moment of the show to date. But the real standouts of this arc are the villains. Something that I feel the series has been lacking up till now. We have this horrifically creepy mafia guy who's motivated solely by money, and he engages in this high-stakes gambling match for literally no reason that provides structure to what is otherwise a thorough beatdown. The one mystery man who kept betting on Yusuke was entertaining and felt like the first real plot element that was explicitly set up to be explored later. The deadly triad fights were fun/fine. The gender thing was confusing and unnecessary, but I did appreciate how quickly they flew through these guys. But it's the badass as hell Toguro brothers who stole the show. They alone had me the most excited I'd been to see an arc unfold. It felt like we were finally leaving the introductory phase of the story. Toguro 2, I guess, is a really interesting character, and I can't quite figure out his personality yet. He doesn't seem like he enjoys his job, but he also has insane Frieza-like percentage power-ups. When they fight Yusuke and Kuwabara, it was the most entertaining action in the series yet. One buff dude and a shape-shifting weapon. So simple, and yet so versatile. This storyline is so well paced, introduces an interesting primary antagonist and a mind-blowingly badass secondary antagonist, creates a conflict that organically loops in all four of the main characters, gives Hiei just enough development, shows off the delinquent attitudes of Yusuke and Kuwabara, while demonstrating how powerful they've become, and expands the world organically. Just fantastic through and through. I loved everything about this arc. A few miscellaneous thoughts about the anime in general. I really love the music in this show. That opening song rips, and I listen to it every single time. The same goes for the outro, which has the dopest shot with everyone just standing around being way too cool. The animation is also pretty great. I'm no expert on that, but I do very much fuck with the art style. I like how everyone has a bit more attention to detail than I'm used to in a typical shonen, particularly with the eyes. Everyone's hair is on point too. The fact that Yusuke has two active hairstyles is such a foreign concept to me, so I can't help but smile whenever it changes. It just adds to the more grounded nature of this show. Like, wow, he styles his hair. What a crazy idea for a cartoon. And the comedy is usually solid. I've already sung Koenma's praises, but even the one-liners from Yusuke and the rest of the cast often hit, and even when they don't, they still work to properly characterize the speaker. Yusuke's a smartass. All his jokes don't have to land for me to appreciate his attitude in a dangerous situation. I didn't know what to expect from Yu Hakusho other than spirit guns and green-colored boy. What I got, frankly, blew me away, and I'm very excited to continue with this series. It's only improved as the story went on, aside from the introduction, which I contend is near perfect. Yusuke already has a place in my heart as one of the most unique protagonists I've seen in a shonen, and I'm particularly interested in what direction Togashi will take his character, since it's clear a lot of care went into crafting him to be exactly how he is. The supporting characters just keep getting better. Kuwabara is already top tier, but Hiei and Kurama are quickly climbing the ranks to meet him. The world of the series is rich with possibilities to explore. There's so much untapped potential that I'm really eager to see where this goes. If I had to rank the top 3 things that I appreciated the most about the Spirit Detective saga, it would be in this order: Yusuke, tone, attitude, character relationships. And just for a hell of it, here's a ranking of all the arcs too. Yusuke's Ordeal, Rescue Yukina, The Beasts of Maze Castle, Artifacts of Darkness, Genkai Tournament. With that said, that's my review of the Spirit Detective saga. I'll be back shortly with a review of the Dark Tournament saga, which is crazy, but for now, I want to know your thoughts. Which is your favorite arc in this saga? Who is your favorite character? Let's talk all things Yu Hakusho, Spirit Guns, and most importantly, Koenma in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, and until the next time, I'll shut up.